Viktor Frankl, the sources of meaning that Frankl wrote about are all based on realizing or manifesting, actualizing values. The most important virtuous value is love. I've given speeches and lectures and so forth where I felt like I was speaking his words in the first person. I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning my first time still when I was in high school. Everything, even up until I was in the military and obviously way since, I always wanted to do things that were meaningful to me, that showed that I was committed to meaningful values and meaningful goals. The most important thing for me is helping people understand that not only does all life have meaning, but that we also have a personal and collective responsibility to search for and discover what those meanings are.
Dr. Frankl said that only the ones who were able to find a reason to live had a fighting chance to survive. Hello everyone! I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. In The Nomadic Soul, each chapter opens with case studies of 6 well-known figures from modern history who, I believe, lived with fully expressed nomadic souls. They were people of substance and character, with a strong sense of morals and ethics. They were driven by a strong mission to help the world through their contributions. So, for the next 6 episodes, I'll speak to experts and biographers of these individuals. Together, we'll distill the wisdom and lessons from their unique life stories and inspire you to reach your full potential. I hope you'll embark on this journey with me because you just might discover valuable insights to take your life to the next level. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. We are multidimensional beings capable of molding our character at any stage in our life. Our identity is fluid and malleable, and we can continue to evolve and enhance it to realize our highest potential. Viktor Frankl had to learn how to master this, having lived in most of the 20th century, one of the most transformative periods in world history. This Austrian psychiatrist and neurologist is most known for being a Holocaust survivor, but in reality, his contributions to mental health and psychology are his true legacy. His seminal book, Man's Search for Meaning, and Logotherapy, a psychological approach centered on meaning creation, is rooted in his observations at the concentration camps, where he witnessed unthinkable cruelty and injustice. Frankl prioritized guiding people to find their deeper purpose in good and bad times. In the process, he discovered himself and crystallized his mission. To glean wisdom from Frankl's incredible life and work, I invited Alex Patakos, PhD, affectionately nicknamed Dr. Meaning. Alex is the co-founder of the Global Meaning Institute and co-creator of Meaningology, the study and practice of meaning in life, work, and society. A prolific author, he has written 2 international best-selling books on the human quest for meaning, The Opa Way, inspired by Greek philosophy, mythology, and culture, and Prisoners of Our Thoughts, written at the personal urging of Viktor Frankl himself. Hello, Alex. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well, Celine. Thank you very much for inviting me to be on your show.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you for making the time to speak with us, especially considering that you are in the process of making a big move to
So,
the other side of the world. How is that going for you right now?
as we say in Greek, siga siga, slowly, slowly. It's mainly due to the bureaucracy that we have to go and go over through a lot of hoops and over a lot of obstacles, but it's getting there. I can see the finish line, put it that way.
Okay, that's promising.
Yeah, that's very promising.
Yeah, yeah. And since we're
So
going to be talking a lot about meaning and things, so what
yes,
does this whole move mean to you? Like, it is a big milestone. So how are you deriving meaning from this
yeah.
particular juncture in your life?
Well, this move is it's been long in coming. I refer to it, if you're familiar with the writings of Homer, I refer to this as my return to Ithaca. And this is, in many respects, I feel right now, especially like Odysseus, on this long journey after the Trojan War, trying to get home and with all these obstacles and all the different detours and so forth. But really, my soul, in my heart and soul, and I've always been on the island of Crete, which is, as you know, is the largest island in Greece, and so it's just taken me a long time to finally get to the place now where I can make the actual permanent move. I've spent months every year for a long time in Greece and in Crete specifically, but to make my permanent residence there is just it's just been it's been a long time waiting for this to happen. So I find this has always been a journey for me. It's an odyssey which I get into a little bit, but that is not just intellectual. It's not just cognitive. It's not just emotional. It's very spiritual for me because my spirit is elevated when I'm in Greece, and particularly when I'm on the island of Crete, because many, many, many generations. I mean, literally, I've written about direct ascendants that go back over 1,000 years on the island of
Mm.
Crete. So yeah, so it's definitely my home to be, and it's always been really. It's just that it's physically, again, I believe in spirit, mind, body, not mind, body, spirit. And I believe that my spirit has been driving me. And every time I've been there, I just feel like my emotional state, my physical state is much more enhanced. So yeah, so in that sense, it's definitely meaning. It's I can get into the definition of meaning that I've written about and speak about for a lot of times, but in brief, it's really our ability to and to understand what our core essence is again another ancient kind of Greek and other philosophies have talked about this as well. But in the Greek thinking, it's kind of know thyself. And so I spent a
Hmm.
lot of time in
Yep.
my life doing this introspective analysis, this existential analysis of where do I belong? Who am I? Where do I connect best? Where can I do the best work? Where can I feel that my spirit is at the highest level? And this has been it. So yeah, so it's definitely a meaning journey. And but all this as we talk about this meaning topic, there are many, many meaning milestones that I've encountered and experienced over my life. And so I think that that's a big part of our journey, all of us, is to be on the lookout for the little meanings and the bigger meanings.
What a amazing and profound way to start our conversation. We couldn't ask for anything better. And I can see that you really do live up to your name, your nickname, Dr. Meaning.
Yeah.
That suits you perfectly. So, Alex, what I know that you are heavily influenced by Viktor Frankl's work, and I'm curious to know what is it that drew you to his body of work and just him as a person in general.
Yeah. Well, I can trace my connection to Dr. Frankl without before I met him back in the days when I was still in high school. And I lived in the U.S. in the States near a mental institution, and I've always in a state hospital. It was a state hospital, a psychiatric hospital, and even though I was in high school, I was always intrigued by what was going on the other side of the fence, the other side of the wall. Why are people there? What caused them to have that type of experience in their lives? And so, even at a very young age, I was very interested in motivation, human motivation and what caused abnormal versus whatever we call normal behavior. And later in life, when I was in the military, I served in the U.S. Army. I was trained in among other things, I was trained to work in the psychiatric mental health area of the military, basically doing counseling and therapy with, at that time, this is a long time ago, obviously you can imagine when I tell you this, during the Vietnam War. And to basically, we didn't have post-traumatic stress disorders then. It was basically, we didn't even have battle fatigue. It was man up, let's get on with it, that kind of stuff. And so we had a lot of issues then. And so the people that trained me at that time were all Freudian and neo-Freudians. And I didn't really resonate with the idea that some of the things that the pleasure principle and some of the ideas of regressing back to your childhood and what caused you. And if you have a trouble with your commanding officers because you really have unresolved issues with your father or your mother, I didn't resonate with that type of motivational approach. And so I had read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning my first time still when I was in high school. And I always kind of resonated with that notion of the search for meaning. And so everything, even up until I was in the military and obviously way since, I always wanted to do things that were meaningful to me, that showed that I was committed to meaningful values and meaningful goals. I just didn't want to make money. I just didn't want to do things for the purpose of pleasure. I didn't really need the influence and power that Alfred Adler, who's the other psychiatrist that influenced Viktor Frankl. I didn't really resonate with either one of those schools of thought. And so when I read Man's Search for Meaning again, and this was later when I was in the military, I realized, that, he kind of left the camp, the Freudian camp, he left the Adlerian camp, and he started his own, school of psychotherapy, logotherapy. And because logotherapy also has some deep roots in Greek thinking, Greek philosophy and so forth, I just thought, well, that's really more my liking. And so that became kind of my mission. And so when I got out of the military and I got involved in writing and speaking and teaching and went back to graduate school and so forth, being on a path to meaning was really became literally my life mission. And it was that became in a lot of respects, the reason I ended up getting the nickname Dr. Meaning is I would tell people that I'm really on a meaning ministry, and not in a religious sense, but it was like, just trying to get to reach people. And Dr. Frankl was very similar. I mean, his commitment in life was to help others find meaning. And I found meaning through helping other people find meaning. And it didn't mean that I told them what meaning was, but it was helping them open up the gates, the doorway, and as prisoners of our thoughts, the cells had keys, and we hold the keys to getting out of our inner mental prison cell. And so that became kind of that way my whole life. And I think part of that also was because of my military experience. Since I lost a lot of brothers and sisters, I just, at a very young age, I just felt like my life became so important for me to not complain, to really be passionate, to be enthusiastic about life, because I was not just living for me, I was living for all those who lost their lives at 19, 20, 21 years of age, and they never got a chance to move on and to do and accomplish the purpose that they were probably, could have done. And so for me to complain and to be, feel rejected, dejected, disillusioned, whatever, I'm saying, well, I'm being pretty selfish then, because, for some reason I was given this blessing to live my life. And so what am I going to commit my life to? And so meaning became kind of that driver.
Mm. And I see a lot of parallels, like between your life and Dr. Frankl's life. I see a lot of similarities. One of them that stands out to me is that both of you had the sense of self-awareness from an early age. I mean, it seems like you both had a sense of what your mission is, or at least an inkling, right? And you
Yeah.
kind of head in that direction, and then saw where it took you. Uh, where does this self-awareness come from? First of all, for you, and
Yeah.
for Dr. Frankl.
Yeah. It's a very interesting question because I've struggled with this question for most of my life, going back to my early days in school, in high school, and in jobs and so forth. Because there's a the English word enthusiasm comes from two Greek words, and basically it means manifesting the God, the divine, the spirit within. I've always been an enthusiastic person. well, even as a young child. And so for young children, many times the parents will think, oh, because we didn't have, ADD and those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
I always wanted to do things. I wanted to accomplish something, whatever. And people thought, well, he has a very poor attention span. And the reality is I was excited. It was way up to me when I see young kids, especially, and older people and so forth, manifesting their spirit. You can see it in their eyes, right? I mean, they're lighting up. Whereas I see other people, I've gone into organizations, for example, where it's like walking into The Walking Dead. And and I remember there was a movie, The Sixth Sense, and there's a
Yeah.
quote in there. It's like, I see dead people. Well, I could walk into a company or to a government agency, and I said, I literally see dead people. And then there's other places where people are excited and they're enthusiastic about what they're doing and connecting with each other. So I've always had that drive, that intrinsic motivation, even as a young child. But the issue is that it was a blessing and a curse, because to a lot of people, as a professor, I mean, here I'm talking about as a university professor, I've had my administrators accused me of being possessed, literally, because they said that my energy and that my drive basically was so out of sync with what they were doing and their culture, their organizational culture, that maybe I was not a good fit to be in that university department or whatever, because I was so out there, I was so divergent, and so forth. I took that
Can
as
you
a
give us an
compliment.
example of what something you did that they didn't quite
Okay, yeah.
understand?
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, in the I was teaching university in the U.S. I won't mention the name, but I could if it was necessary. And I was actually a graduate program head, among other things. I was head of a graduate program in public policy, public administration. And while I was there, I had been exploring a lot of different ways of advancing super learning, different techniques, everything, that would subliminal learning, using music, meditation, exploring intuition. I actually co-edited a book on intuition at work, and so forth. And I really wanted to some aspects that were very metaphysical. And so I befriended a gentleman who was an inventor who invented this system it was a bioenergy system that would allow people it was literally a place where he had two different versions of this machine. One you sit in, almost like you're in a meditative position, and then one was like a bed. And he used music, and the music had sensors. And the music, and now you're going to think this guy's really weird, but the music would help you go from your level of consciousness, you can go down and relax, say, to an alpha state and delta state, and so forth. And so I was using music, and then I would have students. I would darken the room in my classroom because I had this machine. I got it from him, and I would have the students sit on the floor, and it would teach them how to meditate. All right, and so I had some of my faculty colleagues walk by, and my class is on and the lights are all off. What is this Professor Patakos doing in this room? And so forth. So one of my former colleagues went to my dean and said that I was teaching students witchcraft. Now, these are graduate students that I was teaching on how they can relax so they could absorb more information, be able to do introspective reflection, understand meditation, because basically meditation, I tried to explain to the dean that effectively meditation could be defined as heightened awareness. And I was trying to get
When
students.
was this?
This would have been in mid 1990s. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So the mid 1990s, at that time, they're doing creativity, innovation, meditation, teaching people about subliminal learning, super learning, all this other stuff was
Yeah.
like time. Like now it's more acceptable, to
Mhm.
do that. But anyway, because I moved I was taking courses that I've been teaching that were basically very left brain, analytical, cognitive, and I was injecting this intuitive right brain, and even metaphysical, spiritual, not religious, but spiritual dimension to elevate the human spirit of the students in my class. And most of these were mid-career people. I mean, this is a graduate program. But I was accused and the students loved it. I was actually one of the most popular professors. But the issue is the administration was really, I don't know, they were challenged by that approach because I should be just teaching the normal left brain stuff. And I didn't. And so I would go off on my own path. And I think that's part of it. And I've done that a lot over all the jobs, whether they're academic jobs, consulting work, working in government, whatever, I've always looked for some alternative pathway. And actually, the book I wrote with a colleague from San Diego State University that was not the university I was teaching at the time, but we wrote a book, edited a book together, Intuition at Work, and the subtitle is Pathways to Unlimited Possibilities. And that's why I look at people. I looked at students, I looked at clients, I looked at customers, whatever. I looked at neighbors as human beings who have unlimited possibilities. And so the search for meaning, which go back to Dr. Frankl, he believed that there's a meaning in all moments of life, and that we're totally surrounded by meaning. And so technically, we're not creating meaning because meaning's there. We have to kind of discover it. We have to find it. We have to look for it. We have to draw the connections and have that ability to be aware. And as I wrote in Prisons of Our Thoughts, it's more important to be aware than it is to be smart. There are a lot of people with PhDs, MDs, law degrees, but they're really kind of armored. They're really unaware and detached from humanity. And so my mission in life, again, that's why I call it a meaning ministry, is to elevate our state of humanity, which I'm afraid today we're living in a world where a lot of that is getting attacked.
I love what you said towards the end. It's more important to be aware than to be smart. Can you say why you believe that's the case?
Well, the actual verbiage to also get a reference point to it comes from a former NBA basketball coach who was the Chicago Bulls coach, Phil Jackson, who really wanted his players to be aware rather than focusing on just their talent, which is their smartness of being a basketball player. Because he said if you weren't aware, for example, of the clock, if you weren't aware where the refs were, the officials, if you weren't aware where your players or your teammates were, didn't matter how great you were, because he had a team that was at that time when he was the Chicago Bulls was an amazing team of egos and talent. All right. And when you have so many people and to manage that much expertise, if you will, it wasn't about their skill set. It was about their awareness. Because if you were a great basketball player and I had an opportunity to get a better shot, but your ego was telling you, well, yeah, I'm the greatest player in the world, and you take the shot and it could have gone to me and I would have made it easier, but you were not even aware that I was in a better position than you were, then we wouldn't take advantage of that. And so the idea is that all of us need to be aware. We need to be, I mean, it's like the saying of, sometimes you got to slow down and smell the roses. I mean, you have to be
Yeah.
aware of,
So be more present, more
be present.
focused.
What are people feeling? I mean,
Yeah.
don't even realize that you're offending people or you're marginalizing somebody's value. You're not showing respect for the human
Mm.
spirit of another person. You're not
Mhm.
showing respect, to the environment. I mean, all these elements are awareness, and I think sometimes we're not aware of even our best intentions go awry because of a lack of awareness. We're detached. We're so obsessed with ourselves. I mean, we're living in a world right now where everybody's doing, selfies. I mean, it drives me nuts sometimes,
Me
when I see.
too.
But the
Yeah.
idea is that like we're losing our sense of humanity, and then the issue politically is that a lot of this stuff enables government officials, media, the entertainment industry, and so forth to take advantage of that. So we're dumbing down people because they're losing their critical and creative thinking skills, their capacity, and then we're obsessing them over things. It's almost like Brave New World, and they're almost like a drug. I mean, our smartphones now become a drug, and I love technology. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been involved in this for a long time, but I've always said, even years and years ago, I said, it's more important for us to control the technology than the technology controlling us. And when we start to let the technology control us, we're enabling ourselves. I mean, now with the emergence of new forms of AI and robotics, I mean, we're going to start moving more and more into transhumanism. I mean, it's not like we're just giving somebody who lost a limb in a war or an accident, something so they can continue to walk and be productive in their life and find joy. But we're basically willing to take people's thought process and control it. I mean, just like we
Yeah.
can remote control cars now. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to start seeing things that are just mind-boggling. And it's like it used to be science fiction, but now we're living in an era where a lot of this is happening. And so what I'm afraid is when you move away from that, we're going to get people. How can anybody, if we define meaning as I do in my work, as resonating with and it's staying connected to our core essence. How can we find our core essence if we're basically allowing artificial intelligence and narcissism and self, aggrandizement to take over? We're never going
Yeah.
to do that deep thinking. We're not going to take a deep dive at who we really are as human beings. And aren't we special? I mean, aren't human beings unique? Shouldn't we be able to, can we just take it all over and just make our brains nothing more than algorithms and control them externally? So, I mean, that's the part I think in terms of the meaning ministry, the meaning mission that I'm fighting against because it's a battle. It's like embracing technology, but not, I mean, you see this now. I mean, when I go to Greece and you go to a restaurant and you're at a table at a cafe or a restaurant, people are talking. They're just talking. I mean, it's like, that's it. You go to Starbucks, in the States and Canada and so forth, and you go to even movie theaters now. You got people going to meetings and everybody's on their phone, and then
I
nobody's
know.
communicating with each other.
It's a big difference.
So, you know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
the part I think that's, and requires people, and we're trying to dumb down people. We're trying to get people away from philosophical thinking. We don't necessarily want them to do that deep dive that we're talking about, self-reflection. We're
Yeah.
rewriting history. We're doing a lot of things right now that I said from a policy perspective, because that's part of my interest. I'm working on a new book that's focusing on the politics of meaning. That's the part that's really bothering me. It's how do we turn that ship around, and have we gone too far? Is it too late? I don't know. It's and then you got all this
Yeah.
violence, and there's hatred, this the vitriol,
Those
this
those are
you know.
very valid concerns, Alex, for
uh,
sure.
uh,
And did you get any inspiration from Dr. Frankl's life? I mean, because all AI and technology, I mean, that's the distractions that we face in
uh,
modern day life, and that's something that could potentially derail us.
uh,
But back during the times when he lived, it was war propaganda. It was the
uh,
Nazism, and in the concentration camp. I mean, particularly there, they were absolutely stripped off everything. Dr. Frankl said that only the ones who were able to find a reason to live, to find a sense of meaning, and to really introspect, they were the only ones who had a fighting chance to survive. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah. Well, that's again, I think the in addition to there's another book that you may be familiar with that I co-authored with my wife Elaine called The Opa Way, which it's basically the search for meaning inspired by Greek philosophy, Greek culture, Greek mythology, and so forth. And in that book, we took the word Opa, and which has ancient roots, again going back to the writings of Homer and others, and we came up with an acronym: Others, Purpose, Attitude, OPA. The O others is connect meaningfully with others, which again, think about that in the context of social media and so forth. Are we really connecting meaningfully, or are they 1,000 friends and they're quote unquote friends? I don't even know who they are. The P is purpose, engaging with deeper purpose. And so that purpose is what you're referring to now, the Frankl. So its purpose is part of the formula for meaning, because your purpose can change. But idea is that you have to have a purpose. And then A is embracing life with attitude, which is the
Mhm.
all of life with attitude. So as you can see, connecting with others, purpose, and attitude are all things that are very much embedded in Frankl's ageist wisdom as well. And he was also very much influenced by Greek thinking, Greek philosophy. So the idea is yes, if you have an aim, you have a goal, you have a destination, as Frankl wrote in his book, and we changed the language just a little bit in the Opa Way, and I think we also wrote it in Prisoners of Our Thoughts. Frankl said, where there's an aim, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's an aim, there's a will. And another way of saying it, as we did in the Opa Way, is where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a purpose, there's a will. If you don't have a purpose to get up in the morning, if you don't have a purpose to survive, if you can't imagine, as he did, that not only was he going to live with his family again, even if he ended up, for the most part, not having the opportunity to do that because they died, but he also imagined him giving a lecture after liberation. And he was going to be in California, which he actually did, and so forth. You needed that purpose, you needed that aim in order to keep you going. It's a pull. But besides having the purpose, you also needed to connect meaningfully with others. So part of his drive was he connected with all the other inmates. I mean, as you pointed in your information you sent me, he was able to help other prisoners. He also helped Nazi guards in some cases. I mean, he didn't believe in collective guilt. He didn't believe that everybody who was there was necessarily, who was German, was necessarily going to, was a bad person, because he was much more grounded in the human spirit. And then he had an attitude, which is obviously his most famous quote, that kept him alive, because he knew that no matter what was taken away from him, he still had that. And so that those concepts that drove him are intrinsic. It's not just something that happens outside of ourselves. That's why, as he wrote, and as I've written, the extrinsic motivators of finding pleasure in life, of partying, of sex, of drugs, alcohol, of shopping until you drop, and so forth, they only last so long. They're fleeting. You have to have something intrinsic. And so the idea is that goes to kind of the things you're talking about. The whole notion of a dream catcher is you can't have a dream catcher unless you're willing to try to catch something, and you want to have a dream. So the kind of work you're doing is helping people. And the fact that you can get a following around this notion is literally helping people, because just think about it. A dream itself is an aim. It's a purpose. All right. If you don't have a dream, and might as well give up. Right. And so that's why when you see, there's so many other prisoners who've been affected by man's search for meaning and prisoners of our thoughts. I mean, I've literally done a lot of work with inmates, including some on death row, who find meaning in their incarceration, their physical incarceration, even though they're never going to get out of prison. They can find meaning in it, and they can do something about it. They can have a purpose, whether it's to mentor younger inmates to ensure that they don't continue a life of crime. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, there's been a lot of stories. And so over time, I think the more you realize that helping people understand, one, that they should have a dream, they should see something that they can move towards. And then secondly, the catcher notion is that they have a personal responsibility to try to pursue that. And if they can't, and they don't know how, they need to read books, they need to go to seminars, they need to go to your podcast and so forth, so they can see that they're not alone and that these things are doable. As Walt Disney once said, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes, actually. Hey, everyone. Are you enjoying Viktor Frankl's story so far? Be sure to read the rest of his story in depth in my book, The Nomadic Soul, and be inspired by the life of the other 5 nomadic souls I've covered. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or buy a copy. I can't wait to take you on this profound journey. Alex, what is the connection between meaning and identity? How much of our identity informs our ability to derive a sense of meaning in our life?
Well, again, if you follow the definition that that we espouse, that authentic meaning is a metaphysical component to it. Basically, goes down literally to the notion of resonance theory. To the extent that you resonate with something, a value, a person, whatever, that's a deeper, metaphysical and in some cases subatomic energy flow. To the extent that you resonate with that essence of humanity, including your own core essence, you'll know in your side. The more you get inside of yourself, the more you will realize that there are certain things that resonate with your doing, whether it's work, relationships, attitude about politics, whatever it is. And the more you do that, the more you become aware. And again, awareness is another way of looking at it, is consciousness. And there have been a lot of studies, as you know, of consciousness studies. I mean, I'm a member of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I'm familiar with it, but noetic sciences they really focus on the science of consciousness. But the idea is there's a major metaphysical spiritual component to that. And so noetic is part of this whole notion. Frankl wrote about that in terms of a lot of neuroses that come from something that is outside of ourselves. And so the more that we can get in touch with our core essence, so that we know what is it that drives us, what are the things that make us feel joy, feel the fulfillment, those are more likely to be the things that will keep us on the path to a higher level or a deeper sense of purpose and a deeper sense of meaning. And so that's hard work. I mean, whether it's there are many self-help books about doing the work, and it's inner work, it's inner quality, it's reflection. It goes back in the ancient Greeks. The unexamined life is not worth living. Know thyself. These are all issues about, and what happens is when we spend too much time in the superficial world, selfies, narcissistic behaviors, and so forth, we never really get there. I mean, just think about how many comedians, how many actors, singers, people that we, entertainers that we thought were inspirational that committed suicide because we didn't know what was behind the mask, behind the curtain. And I think that that's part of it is the ability to be able to take a deep dive into your own essence, your own core nature, the things that drive you. And, and it's not easy. I'm not saying, hey, it's an ongoing journey. I mean, I asked Dr. Frankl once, what's the meaning of life? And he said, the search for meaning. I mean, it's ongoing. It doesn't stop. I mean, the founder of the Institute of Neurologic Sciences was one of the people who landed on the moon. And, he came back and they said, what do I do now? How do you
Oh,
top that?
who is that?
Neil Armstrong. So Neil Armstrong was
Oh,
one of the astronauts that went to the moon. And so,
okay.
he came back and he was so overwhelmed with
Hmm.
seeing the small, fragile planet from the moon. And so he became very much aware of the need for studies of consciousness. And so he was one of the main founder of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. So the idea is that the idea behind this is it's hard work, it's introspective, it's self-awareness, but it's stuff that goes back millennia. I mean, like I said, when Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they're talking about know thyself, it's the temple of Apollo, I mean, all these things are about, it's we know nothing. We need to continue to search. And that's what Viktor Frankl was talking about. And that's what I've been talking about. It is an ongoing process of human development, progression,
Yeah.
and sometimes regression. We go up and down. I had a graph of think about it for a
Go ahead.
second. When you think about I mean, what happens if you're flatline? I mean, you're dead, right? But if you're alive, it's up and down. That's right. Well, the issues with happiness versus meaning, people always ask, what's the difference in happiness and meaning? And I say, well, a lot of times happiness comes when people are on the upswing and they see something really going well. Meaning is there too. But the difference is when you're on the downside, meaning is still there, even if maybe you're not happy, but meaning, it's up to you to figure out what is the meaning. Why did I get divorced? Why did I lose that job? Why didn't I get a chance to do X, Y, Z, whatever? And those are existential questions. I mean, the search for meaning is about existentialism and existential thinking. And you think about the word existential as an adjective and adverb is really gained popularity. I think it was just a couple of years ago. It was like the word of the year. And I'm thinking, well, what that many years earlier, if you said there, everybody said, oh, you're an academic. Now you turn on the news. Well, we're in an existential crisis. You've probably heard
Yeah.
that. I mean, all this stuff, and saying, well, what does that mean? It's a meaning crisis. That's what it is. It's a crisis of meaning, and
Yeah.
meaning drives engagement, and this is part of our research. And it drives resilience, and it drives health and well-being. It drives performance, and it drives innovation. And so that's all part of it. And so to the extent that we could do some meaning analysis of who we are as human beings, what drives us, when we are having our most joyful moments, and I'm saying joy, not happiness, joy in the sense that I did something for somebody else, joy in the sense that I did something for the planet, did something for my community, my neighborhood, whatever it may be, that those kinds of sources of happiness were not planned. Many of the things that we find our deepest sense of happiness and joy come unexpectedly because we did something that was meaningful, right? And other things we just do is like we're robots.
Yeah. Is it possible to derive a sense of meaning from something that does not serve us or society? Because people can do something quite atrocious and believe
Well,
that they're doing something with purpose and that it's going to serve them or a higher good in some way.
again, now you're touching on some dangerous ground here,
I
right?
know.
Because it is very controversial. Um, Viktor Frankl, I mean, first of all, the sources of meaning that Frankl wrote about, that you're familiar with, are all based on realizing or manifesting, actualizing values. And there are different buckets of values, creative values, experiential values, right, and attitudinal values, especially during times of suffering. But the issue is, Viktor Frankl was very clear on this, is that the highest value, the most important virtuous value is love. And so the idea behind the will to meaning is that you're committed to meaningful values and meaningful goals that are associated with those values. So if your value is to hurt others or to destroy the planet, you might think it's meaningful, but definitely purposeful because it's your purpose, your aim is to hurt people or to. But the reality is that the world, the planet, the universe will never be able to reach any sort of higher level of consciousness, awareness, peace, tranquility, whatever, if we're unable to connect meaningfully with others, which is the O and Opa. And that's why we say that in the Opa way, you cannot connect meaningfully with others if you believe you have a monopoly on truth. So if somebody comes and feel that my truth is more important than your truth, and I'm willing to kill you or I'm willing to enslave you as a result of that, that is not a way to connect meaningfully. And the purpose of meaning is that we should be trying to figure out we should ideally try to figure out how to live in a way that is based on a higher values, i.e., the highest one being love. The reality is we have a lot of hate right now in the world. We have people, I mean, you talk about concentration camps, and we have open concentration camps right now in Canada because we've got so much anti-Semitism going on. It's unbelievable. And so the issue is that, it's almost like we've regressed. I mean, for somebody who is a Vietnam era veteran to look at the world today, and I'm thinking, my gosh, have we really progressed? I mean, these are progressive ideas. We're worse off than when I was back working on the war on poverty programs and so forth in the States. And so the idea is that I think there's more, the person might perceive it as being meaningful, but the issue is that it's purposeful, but not necessarily meaningful in the way that Dr. Frankl and I are talking about. Because the idea is that we're looking for humanity, and as Dr. Frankl, the human race. And the issue is if we can't get people to rise their level of awareness and consciousness to see that and to start to understand that if we don't do this, we're going to destroy the planet. I mean, there's a purpose of destroying, wiping out Israel. There are a lot of places that, obviously, that have a purpose of destroying it. Is that really the type of meaningful value that Viktor Frankl or I am talking about, or that you want to have as a dream catcher? So that's the thing. But yeah, so there's another way of distinguishing between purpose and aim. It's a destructive aim. It's a hateful aim. But in my definition, that's not what I would talk about as a meaningful goal, meaningful objective. When you look at it from the perspective of logotherapy, you look at it from the perspective of ancient Greek philosophy, you look at it even at the writings going back to Confucius and ancient China. So, I mean, all of the basic core. And somehow we've kind of, as religions started to basically make things more fundamental and structured and so forth, we kind of went away from that spiritual connection. And I think somehow we have to revisit that. We have to I've written a bunch of things about rediscovering the soul of government, rediscovering the soul of business, that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying
where can people find that, all that info?
They could start by just looking for my name on Psychology Today, because I've got quite a number of articles in there, and then there's references to that, and then the website globalmeaninginstitute.com. Find a lot of information there. But the idea here is that there is a difference, and yes, somebody might think that a person goes out and does a mass shooting at a school thinks that they're getting meaning out of that.
Because that's why I brought that up, because I once did a project around cults, and I actually interviewed people who are former cult members and asked them, like, what were they thinking? What made them join the cult? And they said that they were looking for meaning. They were looking for a sense of belonging, and they seem to have found that in these groups, no matter how extreme they were. Yeah, that's what made me want to bring it up and talk about it.
Many of the cults that you're probably familiar with, I mean, there's not that much different between Antifa now and some of the things that are going on right now with the pro-Gaza demonstrations. There's so many people who are involved in those things that don't know anything about the Middle East. They don't know anything about the history.
It's so true.
The people.
So
and
true.
Yet at the same time, they want that sense of belonging.
It's not informed.
But that sense of belonging is not meaning. They may think they're getting meaning because they said, as I said, but the idea here is that, when we say purpose, engaging with deeper purpose under the OPA formula, it really is a deeper purpose in order to get to that deeper level of meaning. So, I mean, you could say, well, I have a purpose to get up in the morning and have a cup of coffee. But is that meaning? Well, you could say it's fulfilling to me to have my coffee in the morning. But is that the kind of meaning we're talking about in this discussion? No, the kind of meaning is really about saving humanity. It's about being able to get people to understand that are we anybody? I mean, if we regress to the days of the Neanderthal and we just go around and killing people and so forth. I mean, some people I think, I have problems with some of the net zero things that are going on right now and climate change because I'm looking at some of the data from not just, the things that they see as solutions, which to me are more ideologies that we're being pushing on people. And the reality is, I mean, we could throw people back into the Stone Age. And is that improving people's quality of life? I mean, how in the heck can we do the kinds of things that people are expecting people to have by 2030, 2035, whatever? And the purpose of good government is to not just provide people with services, but to help them find, or have a life that is good, to allow them the opportunity to have a good life. That's why the Greek philosophers talked about the good life. What is a good life? And we say, to me, the good life is the meaningful life. And how can you have meaning if you're struggling at the lowest end of, this whole notion of the hierarchy of needs? You're just trying to figure out, can I put food on my table? Is that really a meaningful value while we're sending off money to wars and so forth? And, we're not, instead of why doesn't the U.S. Department of Peace exist? I mean, as an example, I don't know. I mean, I know why. I mean, it's about the will to power. It's a will to influence, a will to money. I mean, we follow the money. I mean, you can see this all the time. I've been banned from too many places for saying some of these things. I mean, I was permanently suspended from LinkedIn, because
Wow.
comments, and I had, over 10,000 serious connections that I was involved with in my network. And I just not, and I'm not a big user of social media, but they knocked me off for saying something about the COVID permanently. So, it's like, okay, well, I understand. I mean, Bill Gates owns Microsoft. Microsoft owns LinkedIn. Microsoft is a big funder of big pharma. Hey, can't say it. So the idea is that at what point? But to me, intrinsically, I had to say something, and I was reporting, evidence. I mean, it's not like it wasn't just an opinion. It was an opinion based on something. And saying, well, let's look at this research over here. Why are we only looking at this research? And as somebody who's been a lifelong academic, most research is funded by people. And if you want to do a project, you got to make sure you appease the funders of the research. So think about it. So think about all the big money that goes into universities to do certain kind of studies. And you got to wonder, why are the results of the study a certain way? Why aren't they different? Are they really unbiased, objective, scientific? I mean, I don't know. To me, good science is questioning.
Yeah, you're offering a different perspective or a different
Yeah.
way of thinking about an issue, and
Yeah.
that's so important.
And
You, I
so that's
mean,
part of the
you
reason.
need a bigger platform. It's a shame that
Yeah.
they kicked you out.
Yeah. It's neither here nor there at this point because that's part of the thing for me. I mean, I took it as
Yeah.
a badge of honor to
Yeah.
basically say,
You're
I
doing
mean,
something right, huh?
yeah, no, I was just on on the fallout of COVID, and I was on there and I was up there with some wonderful people who I've admired who've lost their license, medical license or whatever for saying some things
Hmm.
because they felt there were other ways of treating the virus and questioning things and so forth.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. It's like, it's like
It's
so
happening a lot. A lot of intellectual, I don't know, giants, I guess you can call them,
yeah,
like are getting canceled. I think,
yeah.
you have Jordan
Absolutely.
Peterson, you have Sam Harris, all of them are going through that in
Oh,
some
Bobby
form or
Kennedy
the other.
Jr. I mean, look at
Yeah,
Bobby Kennedy
him too.
Jr.
Him too.
I mean,
Yeah.
you have a Kennedy family, which is an iconic family in the Democratic Party, and because he questioned, some of the things originally about, children, especially is focused on the children's health. I mean, he's just seen as an anti-vaxxer, and he's not an anti-vaxxer, and it's like,
Hmm.
but the issue is but true science is questioning. There is no, I mean,
Yes.
you can't have a Dr. Fauci say he is science. I mean, no, that's the epitome of narcissism and arrogance, and so forth. I mean, what Dr.
Yeah.
Frankl once was some people questioned his motives, whether he was arrogant or not, and he said he wasn't arrogant. He just said that if he believed in something, he said it, he espoused it,
Yeah.
and if you know something that you disagreed with,
You met him, right? What was
yes,
it? like being around him? And did you get a chance to pick on his brain, or what was it
Well,
like?
yeah. Well, he was the actual motivation for Prisoners of Our Thoughts, and so when I described what I wanted to do, I was in his study in Vienna, Austria, and talking about meeting him and talk because I felt like I had known him my whole life because I actually told him, and don't tell too many people this, that I said I've given speeches and lectures and so forth where I felt like I was speaking his words in the first person. And I didn't mean to plagiarize, but I said that's how much I resonated with what he believed and what he said. And I remember him grabbing me my arm and he said, Alex, I understand. So he had a metaphysical, and this is an Orthodox person of Jewish faith who is talking to a Greek Orthodox, almost became a Greek Orthodox priest, Christian, and yet there was a bond, and it was a resonance bond. It was something, it was an energy bond that, we didn't have to change, convert ourselves in different ways. We just knew that we were connected. And so the idea is that, for Frankl, sometimes he was very strong-willed and had a very strong commitment to what he believed. And he said, well, people think I'm arrogant, but it wasn't that I was arrogant. He says, if you have something you feel can disprove my feeling, I'm willing to be open to it and say, well, I was wrong. And so that takes a different type of humility and being more humble. It's not just arrogance. But yeah, when I explained to him that I wanted to do a book that was about the search for meaning, that would kind of bring things in, at that time, and it was at the the end of the 2000s. It was still early days of Prisons of Thought's first edition. It's in a third edition now. And I described to him this when I was meeting with him. This happened in August of 1996 at his home. And I remember telling him that I wanted this about bringing his wisdom into at that time was the end of the 20th century into the 21st century. And he said, he grabbed my arm, and forget this. And he just this became kind of a tattoo, if you will, on my soul, because he grabbed my arm and he said, Alex, yours is the book that needs to be written. And that became kind of my driver, if you will, because I said, there's no way I'm not going to do this book. Now the book is in 26 languages and soon more.
Wow.
Uh, and it's in multiple formats and so forth. So I know that I was on the right track with that. But the idea is that it was very humbling. It was very much of an honor, obviously, to be there. I'm still very close to the Frankl family, and
Yeah.
it was very much an important. It was a meaning milestone. It wasn't
Yeah.
just a meaning moment.
What do you want
It
people to
really
take
changed.
away? I mean, you're
Yeah,
very familiar with Frankl's work. You met him in person. What do you want
yeah.
people to take away? What's one thing you want people to take away from from what you've
Well,
learned?
I mean, I think the most important thing for me is helping people understand that not only does all life have meaning, and that if we're going to ever reach this next, what I call age of enlightenment, we have to realize that all life has meaning, but that we also have a personal and collective responsibility to search for and discover what those meanings are. And some of the meanings are going to be smaller meanings. I call them in Prisons of Our Thoughts, I call them mini meanings, like Mini Me and Austin Powers movies. But some of them are big meanings. They're meaning milestones. But until we start to weave together these meaning moments in our lives, where we can start to observe whether there's a pattern that's emerging in our work as we look at this. That's why I encourage a lot of people to maintain a journal or, reflect on, how did you respond to a situation at one point in your life? How do you respond to that now? The more you can do that and do that kind of self and introspective analysis, the more likely you'll see a pattern. And then, as we say in Prisons of Our Thoughts, each of us then can weave our own unique tapestry of existence because it's all ours. I can't weave yours, you don't weave mine. But if we're aware, and so part of the goal here is to help people gain that level of awareness, gain and increase their insight into these meaning moments, and then look at which of these meaning moments become milestones in terms of understanding why they exist, who are they today, and what are they becoming. And that's why there's an exercise Frankl used a lot called the mountain exercise, mountain range
Yeah.
exercise. We have a lot of other ones that are when people are stuck with in terms of their attitude. We use the 10 positive things exercise.
Oh,
Um,
That sounds great. Alex, so I just want to name both your books, make sure our listeners were able to catch it. So the first one is The Opa Way, Finding Joy and Meaning in Everyday Life and Work. And the second one is, of course, Prisoners of
Right.
Our Thoughts. And the books are available wherever books are sold.
Right.
Yep, thanks.
Right. There you go.
There it
There
is
you
right
go.
there, both of them.
Right.
And it's also available in Alex his website, globalmeaninginstitute.com. The link will be in the description. Alex, this has been so inspiring, and I can't tell you how much I have personally learned from it. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you. So I really, really appreciate you being here with us to share your wisdom. It's just been
Well, I
amazing.
appreciate yours as well. And I want you to know this, that you give me hope that the future of the world and humanity is not as dim and dark as sometimes the media portrays it. And you help to bring that light. And I really hope that you continue to advance the Dreamcatcher podcast and everything else you're doing. And I look forward to, thank you for knowing that you're doing this book as well. Thank you for sending me the little piece on Frankl, and just keep going. It's a mission, and the more that people like us recognize that we can connect meaningfully with each other, then we don't feel like we're this lone voice in the wilderness. That we can help point people to the light. It's time. There's too much darkness. So thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. Those kind words really mean a lot to me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, be sure to grab your copy of The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world at thenomadicsoulbook.com. Join me for the next episode in this special series where we'll excavate the wisdom from the story of another luminary to guide us on ways to get unstuck and move forward while discovering new vistas within ourselves.